The humiliation didn't come all at once. It arrived in pieces, glances first, then a sigh, then the voice that finally cut through me like a blade pretending to be polite. It was raining outside, the kind of grey London drizzle that never commits to becoming a storm, but still soaks your shoes and your dignity. The store lights were too bright, white and unforgiving, reflecting off marble floors that smelled aggressively of lemon cleaner. I remember that smell because it made my stomach turn. I remember thinking how much effort went into making this place look untouched by reality. I had walked in because I needed a coat, just a coat. Winter was winning, and my old one had finally surrendered at the elbows. I wasn't browsing for pleasure. I was calculating warmth versus price, fingers grazing fabrics I already knew I couldn't afford. That's when I felt him watching me. The manager stood near the register, arms crossed, suit perfectly pressed, hair so carefully styled it looked rehearsed. He didn't look at me like a customer. He looked at me like a disruption, like dirt that had somehow found its way inside. I tried to ignore it. I always try. I picked up a navy coat, simple, nothing flashy, and checked the tag. My chest tightened. Too much. I put it back carefully, as if respect could be earned through gentleness. "Can I help you?" he asked. The tone mattered more than the words. It wasn't an offer. It was a warning. "I'm just looking," I said, keeping my voice even. Small. I had learned that tone years ago, the one that says, "Please don't notice me too much." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This section is premium," he said, glancing briefly at my shoes. Wet, scuffed, honest. "If you're looking for something more affordable, there are shops down the street. Down the street, away from here, away from him." "I know," I replied. "I'm just comparing." That's when he laughed. A short, sharp sound designed to be heard. "Comparing requires options," he said, "and usually a budget." I felt heat rise up my neck, my ears burning as if the whole store could hear my blood rushing. A woman near the scarves looked over, then quickly away. No one intervened. No one ever does. "I can afford a coat," I said. He tilted his head, finally stepping closer, lowering his voice in that fake concerned way that's somehow worse than shouting. "I'm sure you believe that," he said, "but we don't want to waste anyone's time, do we?" Time. His time. Not mine. Something inside me folded. Not broke, folded. Neatly, quietly, the way it always does when pride becomes too heavy to carry. "I'll go," I said. He stepped aside, gracious now, magnanimous. "Thank you for understanding." As I walked toward the exit, my reflection followed me in the glass, thinner than I remembered, shoulders hunched, coat too light for the season. Poor wasn't just a bank balance. It was a posture, a smell, a permission slip for cruelty. The door chimed as I pushed it open. And that's when everything shifted. A black car pulled up to the curb so smoothly it looked like it had rehearsed the stop. Rain beaded off its surface like it didn't belong to the same city. The driver stepped out first, umbrella already open, scanning the street with purpose. Then the door opened. The man who stepped out wore a dark overcoat, tailored, understated, the kind of fabric you don't touch unless you've signed papers first. His hair was silver at the temples, his face calm in a way that suggested nothing surprised him anymore. He looked up, and his eyes locked on mine. For half a second, the world narrowed to that look. Recognition flickered there, not of my clothes, not of my posture, but of me, the way someone looks when they see a variable they didn't account for. Behind me, the manager had followed, probably to make sure I actually left. I heard his voice change before I heard his words. "Sir, good afternoon," he said, suddenly warm, suddenly bending at the spine. "We weren't expecting..." The man raised a hand, silencing him without a word. His gaze never left my face. "You," he said, his voice steady, accented, expensive. "Did something happen just now?" The manager laughed nervously. "Oh, no, sir. Just a misunderstanding. This," he gestured toward me, as if I were a stain. "Individual was leaving." The man's eyes hardened. "Is that so?" he asked. Rain dripped from the edge of his umbrella, tapping the pavement like a countdown. I felt every drop in my chest. "I asked a question," he continued, still looking at me. "Did something happen?" I could have lied. I could have shrugged and walked away. That's what I'd done my whole life. But something in his tone told me the truth was already in motion. "Yes," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "I was told I didn't belong here." Silence fell heavy and immediate. The man finally turned to the manager. "What is your name?" he asked. The manager swallowed. I'm the store manager, sir." "I didn't ask." "Your title," the man replied calmly. "I asked your name." The manager gave it. The man nodded once, committing it to memory. "Interesting," he said. Then quietly, almost to himself, "Very interesting." He turned back to me. "Please," he said, gesturing toward the store, "come back inside." The manager's face drained of color. "I think," the man added, his voice still calm but now edged with steel, "you and I are going to have a conversation." I stepped back into the light, my wet shoes leaving. Marks on the spotless floor. For the first time that day, the lemon smell didn't make me sick. It made me curious. The door closed behind us with a soft, expensive click. Inside, everything felt smaller now. The ceiling seemed lower, the lights harsher, the air tighter. The manager walked ahead of us, his shoulders no longer straight, his confidence leaking out with every step. I followed the man with the silver temples, my heart beating so loudly I was sure the mannequins could hear it. Customers had noticed. They always notice a shift in gravity. Conversations dulled, eyes pretended to browse while ears leaned toward us. Something was happening, and it wasn't meant for them, but they wanted it anyway. "Office," the man said, not asking. The manager nodded too fast. "Of course, right this way." The office was glass-walled, perched like a fishbowl above the sales floor, a place designed to watch without being touched. As we entered, the manager rushed to pull out a chair. "For you, sir?" The man ignored it. "Sit," he said instead, to the manager. The word landed with weight. The manager hesitated, then obeyed, lowering himself into the chair like it might collapse under him. The man turned to me. "Please," he said gently. "You can sit if you'd like, or stand, whatever makes you more comfortable." No one had asked me that in a long time. Comfort was a luxury I'd learned to live without, like silence or sleep without counting bills. "I'll stand," I said. He nodded, accepting it without commentary. Only then did he take the chair opposite the manager, crossing one leg over the other with unhurried precision. He looked around the office, noting the framed awards, the sales charts, the polished desk. "Nice space," he said. "How long have you been here?" The manager cleared his throat. 7 years, sir. 7 years, the man repeated softly, cutting him off. "And in those 7 years, have you ever been trained on how to speak to customers?" "Yes." "Sir, of course, we pride ourselves on—" "Good," the man said. "Then this won't be a training issue." I felt my spine straighten just a fraction. The man turned his attention back to me. "I'd like to hear what happened," he said. "In your words, take your time." The manager shifted in his seat. I could feel his eyes on me, sharp now, warning, a look I recognized, the look that says choose carefully. My hands were shaking. I clasped them together to hide it. "He told me," I began, my voice low, "that this section wasn't for me, that I should go somewhere more affordable." He laughed. He said I'd be wasting everyone's time. I stopped. The words felt heavy in the air, uglier spoken aloud than they'd been in my head. The man didn't react right away. He didn't sigh or frown or shake his head. He simply listened. That somehow was worse for the manager. "Is that accurate?" the man asked, turning slowly toward him. The manager forced a smile. "Sir, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I was only trying to assist. Sometimes customers can be sensitive when what?" the man asked. The smile faltered. "When expectations don't align with reality." The silence that followed was brutal. "Reality," the man repeated. "Tell me, what reality were you responding to?" The manager glanced at me. Just a flicker. "Enough." "Well," he said carefully, "we do get people who come in without the intention or ability to purchase. It's my responsibility to maintain the store's atmosphere." The man leaned back slightly. "And what atmosphere is that?" "Professional, exclusive." "Exclusive," the man echoed. Then he nodded once, as if something had finally clicked into place. He turned to me again. "May I ask what you do for a living?" The question startled me. I hesitated. Old instinct screamed that this was a test. "I work in logistics, supply chain consulting." The manager blinked. "And before that?" the man asked. "I started in warehouses," I said. "Night shifts, inventory. I worked my way up." The man smiled just a little, not kindly, not cruelly, thoughtfully. "Hard work," he said. "Invisible work." He turned back to the manager. "Do you know who I am?" The manager swallowed. I believe so, sir." "You're Mr. Whitmore." "Correct," the man said. "And do you know why I'm here today, unannounced?" The manager shook his head. "I'm here," Mr. Whitmore said, "because this store is being considered for a regional flagship upgrade, which means investment, expansion, and leadership review." The color drained completely from the manager's face. "I observe quietly," Mr. Whitmore continued. "I watch systems, behaviors, assumptions, and today, before I even stepped through the door, I witnessed something fascinating." He paused. "I watched you decide someone's worth before knowing a single fact about them." The manager opened his mouth, closed it again. "That," Mr. Whitmore said calmly, "is not exclusivity. That is laziness." The word hit, harder than shouting ever could. "I'm sure you didn't mean to offend," Mr. Whitmore went on, "but intention doesn't erase impact, and impact in this company has consequences." He stood up. The movement was subtle, but the effect was immediate. Authority rose with him, filling the room. "Please step outside," he said to the manager. "I need a moment alone." The manager looked at me again. This time there was fear in his eyes, raw, undeniable. "Yes, sir," he murmured, standing too quickly, nearly knocking his chair over as he left the office. The glass door closed. For the first time since I'd entered the store, it was just me and Mr. Whitmore. He exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said. The words landed unexpectedly, not as an apology for the scene, but for the weight. "No one deserves to be spoken to like that," he added, "especially not in a place that profits from appearances." I nodded, unsure what to say. He studied me for a moment. "You handled yourself well." "I didn't feel like I did," I admitted. He smiled faintly. "Strength doesn't always feel like strength while you're carrying it." He glanced at my coat. Thin, tired, familiar. "Did you find what you needed?" I hesitated. "Not really." "Well," he said, opening the door, "let's fix that." As we stepped back onto the sales floor, eyes followed us again. But this time, the looks were different. Curious, confused, respectful. What none of them knew, what even I didn't fully understand yet, was that this wasn't just about a coat. This was about to become something much bigger. And the manager, He was about to learn what it feels like to be judged by a single moment. I didn't expect the store to change just because I had. But it did. The air felt different when we stepped back onto the sales floor, thicker, charged. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. A man pretending to inspect a belt forgot to blink. The woman by the scarves now watched openly. No shame left to hide. Behind. I could feel the eyes on my back, measuring me again, recalculating. Mr. Whitmore walked beside me, unhurried, as if the world adjusted its pace to his steps. I tried to match him, tried to keep my shoulders from curling inward like they always did when attention became a spotlight. "Take your time," he said quietly. "Choose what you want, not what you think you're allowed to want." The sentence hit me harder than the humiliation earlier. Allowed. I'd built my whole life around that word. Without ever saying it out loud, I stopped in front of a charcoal coat, simple lines, heavy wool, the kind of coat that doesn't beg to be noticed but commands respect once it is. I ran my fingers along the sleeve. The fabric was warm even before wearing it. "It's nice," I said, already preparing to put it back. "It is," he agreed. "Try it on." I glanced at the tag. My chest tightened again. Reflex. I started. Mr. Whitmore didn't look at the price. He looked at me. "This isn't charity," he said, reading the thought before I could bury it. "It's a transaction. You're evaluating a product. So is the store." That reframed everything. I slipped the coat on. It fit like it had been waiting for me. The weight settled across my shoulders, grounding, steady. I barely recognized the person in the mirror, still me, but sharper at the edges, less apologetic. Behind us, I saw movement. The manager had returned to the floor, hovering near the register, posture rigid, face carefully neutral. He didn't come closer. He didn't speak. He watched. "Turn around," Mr. Whitmore said. I did. He nodded once. "That one." A sales associate approached us, her smile practiced, but her eyes uncertain. "Shall I ring that up for you, sir?" Mr. Whitmore didn't answer immediately. "Actually," he said, "I think I'd like you to ring it up under his name." She blinked. "Of course." She looked at me then, really looked, as if seeing me for the first time. "May I have your name?" I told her. She typed it in. The register beeped softly, an unremarkable sound that somehow felt ceremonial, proof, record, evidence that I existed here. As she processed the payment, my payment, I felt something loosen in my chest. I wasn't being rescued. I was being witnessed. The receipt printed. "Would you like the bag?" she asked. "No," I said, surprising myself. "I'll wear it out." She smiled. This time, it reached her eyes. As we walked toward the exit, Mr. Whitmore slowed. "Before we go," he said calmly, "I'd like a word with your manager." Every muscle in my body tensed. The manager stepped forward immediately. "Yes, sir." Mr. Whitmore turned to face him fully now, no longer shielding me with his presence. I felt exposed again, but not small. "Earlier," Mr. Whitmore said, "you made an assessment based on appearance." The manager nodded stiffly. "I understand my mistake, sir." "Do you?" Mr. Whitmore asked. "Or do you understand that I witnessed it?" The manager hesitated. "I understand that I was wrong," he said finally. Mr. Whitmore studied him. "Wrong is recoverable, patterns are not. Tell me, how often does this happen?" The manager opened his mouth, closed it. "I'm asking," Mr. Whitmore said gently, "because this store's numbers look excellent on paper, yet somehow stories like this keep finding their way to my desk." The manager's eyes flicked to me again. Fear, yes, but something else now. Resentment, as if my presence were the problem, not his behavior. "I assure you, sir," he said, "we treat all customers with respect." Mr. Whitmore smiled thinly. "That's not what respect looks like. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim card, placing it on the counter. "This is my direct line," he said. "I want a written report by tomorrow morning, detailing how you plan to ensure this never happens again." "Yes, sir." "And one more thing," Mr. Whitmore added. The manager straightened, hopeful. "Effective immediately," he said. "You're suspended pending review." The word suspended seemed to echo, bouncing off glass and marble and pride. The manager's face went pale. "Sir!" "That will be all," Mr. Whitmore said. No raised voice, no drama, just finality. We walked out into the rain together. The drizzle had thickened, turning the street into a wash of reflections, neon lights bleeding into puddles, the city doubled and distorted. Mr. Whitmore opened his umbrella, then paused. "Do you mind?" he asked, holding it between us. I stepped closer. The coat kept the cold out. The moment kept everything else at bay. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Yes," he replied. "I did." We stood there for a second longer than necessary. "You know," he said, "power doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself when it thinks no one important is watching." I nodded. "And today," he continued, "you were important." He handed me the card. "If you're ever interested in a conversation about supply chains, call me. People who start on the floor see things executives never will." He closed the umbrella and stepped toward the car. As it pulled away, I stood there alone again, but not the same kind of alone. Behind the glass, the store lights glared just as brightly, but they no longer felt untouchable. I walked into the rain, coat heavy on my shoulders, mind heavier still. Because something told me this wasn't the end. It was the opening of a door I hadn't known I was allowed to knock on. The card stayed in my pocket for 3 days. I didn't frame it. I didn't place it on my desk like a trophy. I let it bend with my body, absorb heat, crease at the edges. Proof that something had happened, but not something I was ready to believe in yet. On the 4th morning, my phone rang at 6:42 a.m. Unknown number. I stared at the screen while the kettle screamed itself empty in the kitchen. Old instincts told me not to answer. Nothing good ever came from numbers you didn't recognize before sunrise. I answered anyway. "This is Whitmore." No greeting, no introduction. Just the name, like a door already half open. "Yes," I said, my voice rough with sleep. "I know who this is," he said. "Did I wake you?" "Yes," I replied honestly. "Good," he said. "Then you won't waste the opportunity by overthinking it." I leaned against the counter, fingers tightening around the phone. "I'd like you to come in today," he continued. 9 a.m. Canary Wharf. I sent the address. My phone vibrated before I could respond. "For what?" I asked. "A conversation," he said. "The same one I offered you. The one you didn't call about. There it was. The test hidden inside the invitation. I wasn't sure it was serious," I said. "It was," he replied. "Still is, but seriousness expires." Silence stretched between us. "You're not obligated," he added, "but if you don't show up, I'll assume the answer is no, and I won't ask again." The line went dead. I stared at the wall long after the call ended. The kettle had gone quiet. The kitchen felt too small, too familiar, like it was trying to hold me in place. I dressed carefully, not impressively, carefully. Clean lines, neutral colors, the coat, always the coat. Canary Wharf was all glass and angles, buildings reflecting one another endlessly, like ambition arguing with itself. I arrived early because I always do, because waiting feels safer than being waited for. The lobby swallowed me whole. Polished stone, security desks, people who moved like they had rehearsed their lives. I gave my name. They were expecting me. That alone rattled something loose inside my chest. The elevator ride was silent, fast, numbers climbing. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked composed, but my eyes gave me away. They always do. Eyes that had learned to scan for exits, for danger, for judgment. Mr. Whitmore's office occupied an entire corner floor, floor-to-ceiling windows. The river below looked slow, obedient. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Not a command this time, an invitation. I sat. "You know why I called you," he said. "I know why you said you called," I replied. "I don't know the real reason." He smiled faintly. "Good answer." He folded his hands. "I read your file last night." I stiffened. "My file?" "Your professional history," he clarified. "Education, career progression, performance metrics. You've been underestimated at every stage." I exhaled slowly. "That's not unusual." "No," he agreed. "But surviving it repeatedly without becoming small, that's unusual." He stood and walked toward the window, looking out at the city like it was a map only he could read. "I'm restructuring," he said, quietly, "which means I need people who understand systems from the ground up, not theorists, not legacy hires." He turned back to me. "I want you on my internal review team." The words didn't land right away, like they needed time to find weight. "I don't have the background for that," I said automatically. "You don't have the pedigree," he corrected. "You have the background." I hesitated. "And the store manager!" His eyes hardened just a fraction. "Resigned yesterday." I swallowed. "His report," Mr. Whitmore continued, "was thorough, polished, full of the right language." He paused. "It was also dishonest." I didn't ask how he knew. "You see," he went on, "people like him believe power is a costume, something you put on to keep others out." He met my gaze. "People like you know power is structural. It lives in processes, in decisions no one thinks to question." I shifted in my chair. "So why me?" He didn't answer immediately. "Because," he said finally, "you didn't try to perform dignity when it was taken from you. You told the truth instead." Something about the way he said it made my throat tighten. "This position," he added, "will make enemies." "I already have those," I said. A corner of his mouth lifted. "Yes, you do." He slid a folder across the desk. 3 months, he said. "Consulting contract. Full access. If it doesn't work, we part ways. Cleanly." "And if it does?" I asked. He leaned back. "Then the conversation changes." I stared at the folder. My name was printed on the tab. Clean. Official. Real. "When do you need an answer?" I asked. "You already gave it by coming," he replied. I left the building an hour later, the city louder now, sharper. People rushed past me, unaware that something fundamental had shifted. On the train home, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. Same face, same eyes, different gravity. But as the doors slid open at my stop, my phone buzzed again. A message, unknown number. "Careful," it read. "Not everyone appreciates being exposed. No signature, no explanation." I stepped onto the platform, heart accelerating, the weight of the coat suddenly heavier than before. For the first time since the store, fear returned, not as humiliation, but as warning. And I knew then, this wasn't just an opportunity. It was a line I had crossed, and someone had noticed. The warning stayed with me longer than the train ride. Careful. Not everyone appreciates being exposed. I reread the message until the words blurred, then slipped the phone back into my pocket like it might burn through the fabric. The platform smelled of oil and damp concrete. Somewhere down the tunnel, another train screamed. Metal on metal, impatient, unforgiving. Fear has textures. This one felt sharp, deliberate. Not panic, not confusion, calculation. That night, I barely slept. By the end of my first week on the review team, I understood why. Power doesn't fight you head-on. It reroutes around you. Smiles tighten. Meetings get rescheduled. Emails go unanswered, not ignored, just delayed enough to remind you where you stand. I had access, technically, full credentials, databases, performance dashboards, internal communications, but access doesn't mean cooperation. It means resistance gets smarter. I spent my days mapping systems the way I always had, following the flow of goods, money, and decisions. Warehouses I'd once worked in appeared again on my screen, now reduced to data points, efficiency curves, loss margins, acceptable waste. People like me used to be inside those numbers, disposable, replaceable. Now I was tracing who benefited from keeping them that way. Patterns emerged quickly. Certain stores flagged for underperformance always shared the same traits: lower-income neighborhoods, higher staff turnover, aggressive upselling mandates, managers rewarded for squeezing, not serving. And every time I pulled a thread, I found the same names. By week 3, the silence turned hostile. A senior director, polished, charming, dangerous, cornered me after a meeting. His smile never wavered, but his eyes didn't blink. "You're very thorough," he said. "I try to be accurate," I replied. "Accuracy can be subjective," he said. "Context matters. So does impact." The smile thinned. "Be careful you don't confuse personal experience with professional analysis." There it was, the soft dismissal, the implication that I was biased, emotional, too close. "I don't," I said. "I use it to ask better questions." He leaned closer. "Some questions don't need answers." I met his gaze. Didn't flinch. Then they shouldn't be afraid of them. That was the moment I knew I'd crossed from tolerated to targeted. 2 days later, the warning made sense. I came home to find my apartment door ajar. Just slightly, enough to be intentional. Inside, nothing was missing. No forced entry, no mess. But things had been touched, shifted. My notebook lay open on the table. Pages turned to the section where I'd sketched connections between managers and incentive structures. A message without words. I stood there a long time, listening to the building breathe around me. The hum of distant traffic, a neighbor's television bleeding laughter through the wall. Normal life continuing, unaware. I locked the door and sat on the floor, back against the couch, coat still on. My hands shook now, not from fear of being poor again, but from understanding what proximity to power costs. My phone rang. Mr. Whitmore. "I know," he said before I could speak. My throat tightened. "How?" "Because they always escalate when they think they're losing control." I exhaled slowly. "Someone was in my apartment." "Yes," he said, "no surprise, just confirmation." "You're not in danger, not yet. This was intimidation." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "No," he replied. "It's supposed to make you alert." Silence stretched. "Do you want out?" he asked. The question was real, not a test. An exit ramp offered without judgment. I thought of the store, the coat, the way my name had printed cleanly on the receipt, the manager's face when consequences finally arrived. "I want this documented," I said. "All of it." "Good," he replied, "because that's where this was heading anyway." He paused. "They underestimated you. That was their mistake." After the call, I didn't sleep again. I didn't cry. I organized. I backed up files, logged timestamps, wrote everything down, who said what, when, how often. Patterns don't protect themselves, people do. By the end of the month, my report was complete. It wasn't explosive. It didn't accuse. It simply showed correlations, incentives, outcomes. The quiet machinery of humiliation scaled across regions. I sent it directly to the board. The response was immediate. Emergency meeting, closed session, lawyers. The next 48 hours moved fast, too fast to process. Executives placed on leave, internal investigations launched, press inquiries prepared for, but not yet answered. And then, inevitably, the leak. My name surfaced in a private channel. Whispers turned to blame. He's the one. The charity case, the optics hire. I felt it all, but it didn't fold me this time. On Friday evening, as the city dimmed into weekend indifference, I got one last message. Unknown number, different tone, you should have stayed invisible. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back. Too late. I turned the phone off. Outside, rain traced the windows again, soft and relentless. I put the coat on and stepped out into it, walking without an umbrella, letting the cold remind me I was still here, still standing, still seen. And whatever came next, retaliation, reckoning, or silence, I knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't be able to pretend anymore. Not after this. Not after me. The boardroom was colder than it needed to be, not in temperature. Those systems were calibrated to perfection, but in intention. Cold as a strategy. Cold as a reminder that power doesn't sweat when it's deciding who gets to stay whole. I sat alone at one end of the table, hands folded, posture calm. I'd learned that stillness unsettles people who expect you to shrink. Across from me, faces arranged themselves into neutrality. Legal counsel, interim executives, one empty chair that used to belong to a man who thought exclusivity was a weapon. Mr. Whitmore arrived last. He didn't look at me when he entered. That mattered. He didn't need to perform alliance. The record spoke for itself. The meeting began without ceremony. Findings were summarized. Language was careful. Systemic misalignment. Cultural drift. Incentive distortion. The kind of phrases that sound harmless until you understand how many lives they flatten on the way down. Then came the consequences. Resignations. Terminations. Policy overhauls that would be announced as strategic realignments. Compensation, packages negotiated in whispers. Accountability diluted just enough to remain palatable. When it was over, no one clapped, no one apologized. They nodded, they stood, they left. Power hates closure. It prefers continuation. Mr. Whitmore lingered. They'll recover, he said quietly once we were alone. Institutions always do. And people? I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked. Some will, he said, because of what you documented. Others won't. Because of what came too late. I absorbed that, not as guilt, but as truth. What happens now? I asked. He slid a new folder across the table. Permanent offer, different title, different risks. I didn't open it. I need time, I said. He nodded. Take it. Outside, the city moved on without ceremony. Traffic, laughter, a busker playing something hopeful and off-key. Life refusing to wait for moral clarity. I walked. No destination, just movement. For the first time since the store, I passed a shop window and didn't check my reflection. For permission. The coat had molded to me now, creases earned, fabric remembering my shape. My phone buzzed again. No message this time, just silence where noise used to be. They were done pushing, for now. At home, I made tea and sat by the window as night settled in. I thought about the warehouses, the floors that smelled like sweat and dust instead of lemon. The people whose names never printed cleanly on receipts. I opened my notebook and wrote one last line beneath the web of arrows and boxes. Visibility is not protection, but it is leverage. Weeks later, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a single sentence, typed, impersonal. Your findings have changed our approach. No apology, no gratitude. I smiled anyway. Because change doesn't announce itself with gratitude. It shows up quietly, in policies rewritten, in managers thinking twice, in someone being allowed to browse without being erased. Months passed. I took the job, not because of the title, but because walking away would have meant letting the silence win. Sometimes, when it rains, I pass the store. Different manager now, different posture behind the glass. The lemon smell still there, but faint, diluted. I never go in. I don't need to. That day didn't give me wealth. It didn't give me safety. It gave me something rarer. The understanding that humiliation only works when it goes unanswered, and that the moment someone decides you don't belong, they reveal far more about themselves than they ever could. About you, the city keeps moving, so do I, and this time I don't lower my eyes.